Hello, this is Matt Smith from 1120 Press, and I'm pleased to have Bryan Dubay with us today. Bryan has a new album coming out. It's called Call Your Mother. Bryan, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. Tell us about the album. How do you feel about it coming out now that it's done and it's ready to be released into the wild?
Excited for sure. I can't wait for people to hear it. And also, I just want to make sure I do everything right. I mean, today there's just so many things to get done when you're doing everything yourself. And also, it's awesome to find people like you and Chris to help me out and get the word out. So appreciate it.
No problem. It's a great album. I've immersed myself in it for couple weeks now, and it's fantastic. We're curious about the subject matter of this album that you're exploring here in the songs. We get the sense that there's this loose theme of your kind of exploring where you are right now at this stage of life, and I don't know if that's correct or not, but for instance, there's a song called Asunder, and it starts off with some really poignant lyrics. One day older, one more bone under the dirt. It's just great writing. I wonder if you could talk about what this album is examining.
Yeah, it's definitely examining who I've been and who I am now, and I think at its core, it's really a album of feeling gratitude and feeling grateful for my life and the people that are in it. Realizing, that Asunder especially is like realizing we'll all be gone one day. I've written about that extensively in albums before this. I think about it a lot, but I think this song is that song especially is definitely like a bit of a departure and a bit of a more hopeful take on things.
Why do you think you're stuck on that subject, so to speak, or that you keep revisiting it?
Yeah, I think I think you're lying if you're not scared of dying. That rhymed pretty good. So I think we all think about it, and I think it's an absurd situation that we're in. We don't know why we're here. We have to create our own meaning. All these things. I loved philosophy in college, especially Camus and existentialist writers, and so I think I'm inspired by them a lot. My album before this, Detritus, or before that, oh my God, that was a couple albums ago, was definitely, exploring that whole cyclical nature of denial, acceptance, fear of death. And I think I wrote about that enough, and this is kind of, like I said, a departure. It's kind of feeling grateful for what I have right now.
Is there anything in particular that you think brought about your, I don't want to say change in the way you're looking at it, but I guess change is the word.
Yeah. I think my partner, definitely. She's really good at saying she's grateful for me, and I think that kind of crept into my subconscious, and that's kind of how I write, too, where it's like I'm discovering myself. That's kind of why I make music at all, is to like discover how I'm feeling in that moment, and it's usually surprising, and it's usually really helpful too. I don't write like a journal or anything like that. I write songs, and it's really cool to have that made thing out of nowhere at the end of the day. I mean, that's the coolest thing I think humans do, and I love doing it more than anything. So.
Yeah, and we as we said at the top of the show, this album is called "Call Your Mother," and we're wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about the meaning behind the title of the album, and also there's a title track on the album, "Call Your Mother," and wondering what inspired that song.
Yeah, so that song specifically is reflecting on a time when I was in college and wasn't really good at staying in touch with my parents and not really good at feeling grateful. And, I've learned that over time. and it's specifically a quote from my father. I mean, my dad, he's call your mother, in a very stern voice, but he's a super playful guy. It's not an inside joke. I mean, everybody needs to call their mother for sure. So I thought it was a very relatable sentiment.
In the song.
Yeah, I think you can. I think anybody could kind of say that to anybody. You know what I mean? Like, so now it's kind of become kind of stole my dad's catchphrase, I guess.
What is the song examining?
Yeah, so it's really looking back to that time in college and not really being proud of the way I behaved in certain ways, and kind of regretting not keeping up with the people who have taken care of me my whole life. And so this is kind of a song to say sorry, and also like just grateful that you're around, and as awesome as you are, I guess.
We mentioned at the top of the interview that the album seems to be you kind of examining the stage of your life, but the lyrics of Call Your Mother, there's portions of that song that come from your mother's perspective, and it seemed to us that she was examining where you are at the stage of your life. Is that so?
Yeah, I guess you're right. There is kind of a bit of that song where it's, you're feeling the pressure from an outside source, and in this story, it's, my parents, but it could be society, it could be yourself, to get married, to get a job, to get a house, do all the normal things that you're supposed to do as an adult. And, in the end, I've done them my own way, and my parents have accepted me for doing it that way. They've never judged me for not having kids or not getting married. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit, I guess it's a little bit playful. And there's a stern voice, you know what I mean? Like when you're gonna get married, when you have kids, and that's a normal thing for people to ask, but at the same time, it's not. I don't know.
In 2024, you did this really cool thing that was kind of awe-inspiring, at least to us, that you wrote a song and released one every month.
Yeah.
And for 9 months straight. And then now you're beginning 2025 with a full-length album. And that's really an impressive clip of work. And I'm just, I'm kind of curious, are you better the more prolific you are, do you think, as a songwriter? Or
I think I'm good at throwing ideas away quickly and moving on, and realizing, I mean, I've been writing since I was 14. So, I mean, I think I go through stages, and, there's a bit of forcing yourself to write, but it really is just whenever inspiration kicks in. And like I said, I don't throw things away, and I keep working on them constantly and making them better, and thinking about them and wanting to share them. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question very well, but
no, I was just interested in, because some musicians operate at a completely different pace, and they take a lot of time in between albums and songs, and your output is just it's completely worth noting to us, because it stands out. I mean,
thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I feel the same about other writers and musicians that can keep up that pace. But it's just what I love to do. It's the thing I want to do when I come home from my job, and I want to really discover like who I am and like where I am and how I'm feeling, and songs are how I do that.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it takes me to another subject. In listening to your songs, you have this uncanny ability, it seems, to just take simple subjects that others may take for granted, and you bring a depth and a weight and an imagery to them. And I'm wondering if it's almost like you have this keen sense of observation as you go through life, and just simple things like where you talk about talking to yourself in a supermarket and looking like a crazy man. I'm just wondering where that ability comes from, and what inspires you to see maybe the complex and what other people view as simple.
Yeah. Um, I think that's definitely something. Hopefully, I don't know. It's humble brag, but um, something artists do well is to bring simplicity, I guess, into the complexities of life and bring beauty into the mundane. Um, I mean, it's really just a place of self-reflection and wanting to bring people into my world as well. And you need details, and you need certain things like the grocery store, which we have all been to a grocery store, obviously, and throw the absurd in there where you're talking to yourself, but it's all worth it to get the things that you want for the people that you love, I guess, is what that you're talking about, that song, Talking to Myself. And yeah, I think I've always liked doing that. I went to school for photography, and people would say that about my photography as well, as, finding beauty in the most mundane, ugly things that people would never even think to look at.
You mentioned that storytelling is something that you've gotten better at, and I'm just wondering, for given that sort of realization on your end, I'm just wondering how you think you've progressed as a songwriter, doing it as long as you have.
Um, I'm heavily influenced by other artists, and I think that over the course of the past 5 or 6 years, whatever, I've kind of leaned into that storytelling side of music. Was never really super. You're gonna kill me, but never super into Bob Dylan. But a musician named Andy Schauf came to me about 5 or 6 years ago, and I just fell in love with the world that he's created. I mean, he made a whole album about just a single party and all the things that happened within that one night, seemingly. I mean, Elliott Smith was the original kind of guy like that, and discovered him the year he died, and I just, remember just getting goosebumps and crying and just being like, this is the most beautiful stuff I've ever heard in my life, and that'll never get out of me. Like, that'll always be in my bones, those influences, and I hope I can, I don't know, do those influences justice, I suppose.
When you sat down to write and record this album, was there a place you wanted to take it musically in terms of direction or plays compared to your previous work?
Definitely. Yeah. Love this question. I think what you were starting to say before too, where it's like, I'm a singer-songwriter, but I'm also a producer, and I love highly cohesive, like, pieces of work that are a whole album. You start to finish, it feels like one piece of work, and I wanted to do that. Kind of a couple albums previously, especially last year, I was like, synths, lap steel, like whatever. I was all over the place, and I think I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go. And I wrote the song "Walk It Off," and I worked with a person named Jody that helped me produce. They did lap steel for it, and I was like, I want to go in that direction. Like, I love that feeling. All the music I listen to is like that, and I was like, I took a finger picking class online and started trying to incorporate some of that stuff. And the classical guitar, there's Gregory Alan Isakov, and just everybody I listen to seems to use that instrument. So I was like, I'm gonna grab one of those, and I just fell in love with it. It sounds so good. It's so easy to record. And I figured out how to play slide guitar, which I didn't realize that I loved so much until I started making this album. And then I hear it everywhere, and all the music that I listen to, I'm like, oh my God, I've been listening to slide guitar since I was 10, George Harrison, like all these people. And so I wanted to kind of just pick some instruments and limit myself to, organs. And I had a couple players. I had violin, shout out Sally, and Alex Cousins on cello. So yeah, I think limiting yourself is good if you want a cohesive piece of art.
That actually plays into the next question we have, because one of our favorite songs on the album is "Being Nothing," which features some beautiful work by guest musicians like Sally Schaefer, and it got us to wondering whether, when you sit down to write a piece of music, when you sit down to write a song that's going to involve guest musicians, are you hearing what instruments you want as you write it, or is it an after the fact thing after you've played it a couple times and recorded it? Because the instrumentation on that song in particular is just perfect. It sounds like it's natural, like it belongs there.
Thanks. It's definitely later on. All these songs I've had around for a couple of years now, to be honest. And I was afraid of touching them. I didn't know how I wanted to produce them, so I just let them be. And I played them around Buffalo for a year or so as well. And I knew I wanted strings on it. And I knew a couple strings players, so I called them, DM'd them up, and it just worked out. I mean, went over one day with Alex, and we really honed in, and we figured out those two songs that he's on. And Sally was just good enough to just throw a bunch of stuff at me, and I was able to kind of like clip it together. I wasn't really sure I was gonna like it, like doing it that way, but I really did. Like I was able to actually control a lot, and she just threw me riff after riff after riff, and I could just be like, chop up, I like that riff, and put it here and put it there. But no, I think it was actually the wisest thing I could have done was to not touch those songs. I actually tried to produce "What If" years ago, and it came out like what's that band, Slow Pulp, or kind of more grungy and distorted guitars and stuff like that. And I was like, it's good, but it doesn't quite fit it. So I just threw that away and started again, and this is what came out. Yeah.
How many more songs do you have in the vault that we might be hearing down the road?
Yeah, I'd love to just go right back into the studio right now, to be honest. But at the same time, I think I need a little break from being inside, and you know what I mean? It's winter right now. It's great. I was just like, man, I gotta get out of my studio for a second. So I think maybe in the summer or fall or something, I have 8 or 9, 10 songs that are sitting there. I play them maybe once or twice a week or whatever, and see what they sound like and see what they want to sound like. And I feel like they're even more upbeat, which is a weird thing to say about my music, but they're even more like a little bit more fun. So I'm excited to kind of see where that goes.
Do you think you'll ever record an album with a full band?
Like live in a studio, or like all playing at the same time?
As a little less of a solo effort.
It's tempting for sure. Yeah, I think about it every album, and I never do it. But so like those 9 songs last year, I just went into the studio and had drums. I was like, here's a drummer that I can't drum like this guy can. So shout out Matt Cosman, and he just did an amazing job. But I mean, I think most musicians dream of having a full band, create their thing that they thought up. And I'm a little bit too controlling at the moment, and I'm trying to let go of that control a little bit, I guess, as I age. But I did a live session with John Bobowicz, Whitetails, beautiful band if you don't know them, in his studio. And so, there's a demo, there's masters, there's the things that I created, that I recorded by myself, and then I went into his studio and a band. We all played together all at the same time and recorded that. So there's going to be those 3 live songs with that as well. So there's at least that.
Bryan Dubay, thank you for joining us. Is there anything else you want to add that we haven't touched on before we go?
Call your mother.
I'll make it on my own. I only call you when I'm sorry.